The company Solar States is teaming up with the Philadelphia School District to help prepare students for careers using solar energy.
Solar States flipped the switch of the largest solar panel array in Philadelphia.
Welcome back to another episode of Yo, Son!
Welcome back to another episode of Yo, Son! I'm your host, Micah Goldmarkel, here with
Jared Pashko. And today on this show, we've got one of the original Solar States OGs. Chris Roscoe, who now works for SolarEdge. Welcome to the show.
Oh, man.
Thanks.
I'm enjoying the applause track here. Well done to the sound.
Yeah, keep it rolling.
Yeah, keep it rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the producers at Seinfeld are getting jealous over here. You know,
we need an encore for Chris. That's how legendary
80s
he is
sitcoms.
So a little background, full disclosure, Chris has worked at Solar States. It was a while back, and he previously ran his own solar company, did some really great work. So I think it's fair to call Chris an industry veteran. Chris, do you want to give a little bit of your bio in the industry?
Yeah, I think I'm an engineer by trade, civil, not electrical. I actually had to look at this today. I started solar in 2009, a little bit after you, Micah, I think. And I started my own company, like Micah said. I had that for 6 or 7 years, and then went to work with you guys, which was amazing. And then now I'm at SolarEdge, and I've been here about 7 years. And I'm working as a technical account manager. And really what that means is I support our national accounts, and I make sure that they have all the support that they need with engineering, on-site support, all kinds of good stuff. So it's been...
Are they solar companies, or are they clients like, national chains?
Both.
Okay.
Yes. So you'll have a lot of...
When Amazon calls, you come to knock, and you're the guy that opens it. Yeah.
That happens to be one of our big customers. But with a lot of them, we meet, we work directly with the developers and the EPCs, and that's kind of the end off-taker. So There's not always a lot of interaction, but sometimes there is a lot of interaction with, some of the really big companies you guys know. They have their own quality control and their own engineering teams that are reviewing every step. So it's pretty cool.
That's great. So you've really seen a big arc of the solar industry over the years. I mean, would you have ever expected it to be where it is today, which is this crazy growth industry?
No, it's interesting. I remember the last year I had my company, we did a 330 kW job. And I thought that was just beyond huge, and it's interesting now when you see people's portfolios of work that's coming up in their pipeline. It's 7 megawatt project in Maryland, 6 megawatt project here, and 14 megawatt projects. And the scale, and it's not just the scale of the actual individual projects, but it's the amount of projects. When you have customers that have 50 megawatts that they're going to do in a single year, and obviously these are big developers, but it's been a pretty amazing growth. And Micah, we kind of started around the same time, and the building you were first in, I can't think of the name of the building. Crane Arts.
Crane Arts. Yeah, Crane Arts. You got it.
That was a big system.
That was huge. It was 84 kW, and it was like the biggest in Philly for a while.
Yeah, and so it's pretty amazing. And I feel like every time in that, in the, let's say 14 or 15 years, every time you feel like the industry might be, coming at a really difficult crossroads, something swoops in and it just lifts it up, and it kind of keeps it on that trajectory.
And some of that is technological, right? I mean, there's
100%.
been huge technological innovation. Like what have you seen over the years from when you started, this is how solar worked, and now it's this way?
Yeah, I think when we started, it was very design intensive. It was
it kind of felt like DIY, it was like
a little bit
for guys at home that wanted to do something cool, gals.
Yeah, I think, and there was a lot of ways to interpret code and the way to build, and everyone kind of had their own, own style. And you would go to some of the early shows and you'd see a lot of people in Birkenstocks and talking about the
Berkeys
positively grounded system up in New Hampshire. And, now it's like a very streamlined thing where you can almost design a system without even being an engineer. And the cost of the equipment has come down significantly, and it's a much more professional type of industry, I would say. I think that's the biggest change.
Yeah. It's funny, Chris, that you say that. I was just talking about this with my associate Amanda Bybee at Amicus O&M, how like solar is sort of transitioned from, the folksy, Berkey, guy to being big business. It's like it is a business now, and there's pluses and minuses to everything, but that's like a transition that's definitely happened.
Yeah, I also think in that same, I guess, vein of topic, it's interesting when I think bigger companies now, it's not so much about being green. The metrics, the financial metrics are there that they're like, we just want to save money. And, that's good too, because it's bringing more business into our realm. But it's interesting. There's a shift there too. I mean, obviously everyone wants to have some form of sustainability, but at the end of the day, I think some of these big stakeholders, they just know that it's cheaper.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, I feel like talking about those benchmarks, Micah, I remember when you were talking about some of the money from Obama, I guess, right? Was it 2008? Like,
yep, that's right.
Was a big benchmark.
Right. Obama had turned what was a 30% federal tax credit at that time into a cash grant, total cash.
Right.
So it was a big difference.
I feel like that was a real jump start at that point in time to, hey, people are getting cold hard cash, not tax credits. They don't need to have, all these things. If you're a small business just trying to get started, like Solar States, put money.
The other thing too that's really amazing, like I think when Mike and I first got into this, the Sunshine program was off the charts. The rebates, obviously the cost
PA Sunshine. Yep.
PA Sunshine program.
It was a state grant.
And it's amazing because I look back at, it's funny, I was deleting a bunch of old emails and it had the original list of contractors for the original Sunshine program. And it was over 400 people, which probably I would say 10
was about 600 total people.
Right. And 10 of them are still in business.
No, I would venture to say it might not even be 10.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
I mean,
that's the solar coaster for you folks.
Now, wait, is that? I seem to remember that's kind of like an old version of SREX in PA, right?
No,
different.
No, it was
cash. It was cash money.
There were some people that I don't know what program it was, but they were getting like these SRECs from PA that were like $400. And I mean, they had this system. It was like, I don't know, 200-watt modules, and they wanted to upgrade them. I was like, you can't upgrade this system. These SRECs are too valuable.
Here's the thing. Originally, when I came into the industry, Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. were the same SREC market. You could sell into D.C. So if they're getting $400 SRECs, it's because they're grandfathered into the D.C. market.
Right.
Because they got in so long ago before D.C. closed its borders.
Got it. Look at that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good memory, Micah. That's exactly what it was. And then we closed borders and Wow.
Actually, it's one of the big, I've had several swings and misses in my life, but I turned on the Crane Arts solar array 3 months after the Washington, D.C. SREC border closed. If I had been able to get into that SREC market, oh my goodness, I'd be sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's amazing the work that we have on I guess like the outer belt of DC. You'd be amazed how much solar is feeding into that grid.
Yep.
But to come back to that question though, the full circle, what's really cool to see now is really, a lot of the big players like SolarEdge, like Enphase, they're now looking at, it's not so much about just solar anymore. It's about the whole ecosystem of a house or a business. And as you get more grid saturation on some of these bigger markets, like in New Jersey, you have utilities are saying, okay, well, you guys can connect, but we're going to have, a lot of curtailment, active curtailment or voltage regulation or all kinds of extravagant rules of how to interact. And that's a whole part of like driving up the software of all this, of all of these companies that are now finding ways to really put big systems, on grids that previously wouldn't have been able to support it. So like, in batteries, commercial batteries, residential batteries, it's this whole home and business ecosystem that's really about energy management, and that's to me where this whole industry is going, and it's really cool. It's really complex, but it's also really exciting.
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you should say that, because I feel like it's kind of with the battery systems and some of kind of the various factors of loads and generation and everything, the engineering is coming a lot more full swing into it. It starts getting a lot more complicated.
Yeah, and it's cool because every state is a little bit different on the way why batteries are important.
Right.
Pennsylvania may be different than California, where you have peak load considerations, and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Some places just really, let's say Florida, for example. We just we went in and we programmed a lot of the batteries that we have in Florida to be ready for outages, to make sure that they were in the correct
resiliency. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, grid resiliency is huge. So I think that's going to be more and more, part of the equation. And you guys seem like you're way out ahead of the curve on that part.
It's funny, man. I appreciate that. But I think the industry has simultaneously gotten more and less complex, because I remember doing the Crane Arts solar installation, and I would estimate there were 80 different parts, from a little weeb that you had to crunch under each solar module, to grounding lugs, to, all of these parts. And now we've just totally simplified that and gone down to maybe, 15, at most 20 parts for a solar installation. So in that way, it's gotten less complex. But in the ways that you mentioned, batteries, load management, even like CTs, hooking up and seeing the power that your home or business is using mapped over the solar generation is a big part of what we do now. So where do you see this going? Like, where do you see the future of solar and these product offerings going?
I think where I see it going is two things. I think there's going to be a lot more batteries, especially in the commercial space. I think that's going to be the next big growth area. But I also see that there's going to be more opportunities into areas where you probably wouldn't have had commercial solar, based on all of this new technology to be able to interact with grids that are a little bit, in need of different things. And that's just, I also think like the IRA, there was a lot of ambiguity. This is interesting, but I feel like there was a little bit of a lull in commercial projects because people were trying to understand the Investment Reduction Act.
Definitely.
You might draw on a blank. Is that the correct?
The IRA. Inflation.
It's the inflation. Investment reduction. No, you want to increase investment.
It was an investment in America.
Yeah, but I think there was for the big developers, there was some ambiguity on just how to best play it.
Yeah.
And how to best strategize some of these projects. And now we're starting to see that pipeline. The pipeline. There's a lot of big projects that are queued up now. That's finally people are starting to understand all the little nooks and crannies of that IRA. So,
and I think it's going to also open up a ton of business for nonprofits.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Like people that were really mission aligned, now they can get that direct payment, or people in low income communities where now you can offer, products with an added 10%, tax credit.
That's huge. I didn't think about that.
Those are when you said nooks and crannies, that's what I started thinking about. All those people that have traditionally wanted to go solar, but like for whatever reason couldn't.
Yeah, and it'll be also interesting to see the impact of manufacturing in the U.S. if that ends up driving down costs even further.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah, Enphase just opened up a couple. We're in the process of manufacturing in the U.S. I think everyone's taking advantage. Those are big incentives.
I got to highlight that. I got to pause right there for a minute, because this is jobs. This is what we're about here at Solar States. But also, I think this is the biggest win of the Biden administration is they took a look at policy and they said, you know what? We've been doing tariffs for a long time on solar panels and on, equipment or whatever, and it's not really working. And that's the stick to economic progress. Let's do a carrot to economic progress. Let's give incentives that are long-term, that are based in legislation that lasts out 10 years, and see if that does it. And lo and behold, look at the manufacturing and jobs that's created. So that's been a brilliant stroke.
That's awesome. That's so true.
I'm really curious to see what happens, though, because, net, I think if prices stay the same, it's still a win, because we've got American-made products. We're putting Americans to work.
Well, it's also going to open up a lot more government contracted work where, stuff has to be made in America.
Right. Yeah.
There's going to be that element, but it seems like it's hard to drive the prices down much more than they are.
Labor's just got to be very expensive compared to where some of the places where they're manufacturing.
I just saw a solar panel that had the racking and inverter integrated all on it.
Oh, jeez. You're down to one part.
You have one part, literally. You put it
two
down
parts.
On the
you
roof.
have the cinder block and the
right.
You're like done, and this is for like pitched roofs. You can deck mount it to the pitched roof, so the deck mounts come on the edges of it, already on it. And you just lay it down and plug it into the one next to it.
Oh, that's amazing.
It. You keep thinking there's not going to be any more innovation. Like, it can't get simpler. And then it does. And you're like, wow, there's the next one.
Yeah, I was on a job a couple weeks ago, and it has that new panel claw FR. It's FR series. I don't know if it's 5 or 10 or whatever, but that's shocking how cool that is. And just the simplicity of it. I'm sure there's other manufacturers that have similar, that level of simplicity, but it's just as sleek. I know it's only a 5-degree tilt, but it's so cool. Circling back though, a little plug for you guys. I was thinking of topics, if we came into a lull, we couldn't think of something to talk about, but
always a lot to talk about here.
No, I know, but the thing that really struck me, I was thinking about solar states, and I'm around a lot of different companies, and I get to see how companies operate, and you kind of get to see some of the inner workings, and you also see a lot of people come and go. And I think the thing with you guys, I think it's almost, I've never seen anyone that had the same core values about bringing up the community and the tide that lifts all boats, and like what you guys are really about, and the education component, and hiring the people that come out of these programs, and like this circular thing that you guys have. And I don't know anyone that has that much depth and that much and cares that much about that stuff. But I also wonder if that's kind of, you guys aren't always, the bottom line isn't like the number one priority. And maybe that's why you guys have had this amazingly perfect trajectory.
I wish we could get so many of our customers to hear that.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot.
Something. It's really amazing. And it's like every time I see a new Facebook post or something like that, it's like, hey, this guy just came out of this program and he's awesome, or he's already accelerated to a foreman or superintendent. I don't know what your guys' job titles are.
Lead installers, awesome.
It's really
cool.
Thanks,
man. Well, it's fun to hear you say that, because you were here for a big part of the struggle when we were sitting in an office with no windows and trying to grind it out in the back of a warehouse.
Yeah, but I mean, it's there's something to be said for that. Like, I saw Cottrell, I don't know, a month ago, and he's a lead now. I mean, that's a pretty neat story. Even the guys that maybe have left.
I was thinking about that the other day. Like, I have this picture of Cottrell. He looks like he's like a baby, like must be 18 years old.
Big baby.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But like, and he just celebrated his birthday. Shout out Cottrell, happy birthday. That's the man.
Oh yeah, that's right. Trell, he's right behind. Trell's right behind
you.
Yeah, there he is on the poster.
But yeah, I mean, not only is he a lead, but he's also leading commercial sites now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's just heavy hitting.
And I don't remember the guy that went out to Colorado, but he's doing well. I mean, you guys have also taken people,
Thomas.
You built them up. And you're putting them out in the solar world, and they're growing. Like
Well, that's how we feel about you, Chris. Come on.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And we've got Spencer over at Iron Ridge, right? And we're Abiola's somewhere.
Oh yeah, Abiola's at Pure Power. Sure.
Wow, Pure Power.
People. Yeah.
Oh, those guys that's an incredible company.
Are you going to RE Plus next week, Chris?
No, unfortunately not. One of these times.
Because I do feel like going to RE Plus, which is the International Premier Solar Conference, as an installer, as an employee at Solar States, what you just described, it's one of the only environments where I feel that energy. Because, when you're talking to a customer, they've got 3 quotes next to them, and every guy's got their pitch of, well, we've got 55 years of electrical experience, and
I know.
we've, right. And so you kind of feel like, well, I'm just like the other guy. And then when you go to these conferences and you meet people that have been in the industry for so long, and you're wearing a Solar States hat or shirt, and somebody comes up and says something like you just said, man, one of the guys that came through your work study programs is working with us now. Or I remember when you guys did this project 10 years ago, and I just talked to the client the other day, and it just like, it really kind of sets in like, wow. Like,
yeah. I mean, the thing to those potential customers is like, who's going to be around in another 10 years?
That's right. That's right.
No, I mean that, the people that are hung up, obviously the bottom line is important, but the people that are driven by that, I feel like they don't prosper.
We offer a 10-year workmanship, which is really solid, comprehensive.
Yeah.
We stand by everything we do, but we often get beat up by companies that have maybe been in the industry. And we've been in business for 15 years. It's our 15-year anniversary.
Oh, that's
we
crazy.
Get beat up by a lot of folks who are, 5 years in the business, and they've got a 25-year warranty. And I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, next time you're dealing with somebody like that, tell them that we'll give them 100-year warranty. Because, like, what's the difference anymore? It's all just smoke and mirrors. It's like so
I was
crazy.
on a job, and it was, we'll go nameless on this, but it was a job. It was a residential job in the Philadelphia area, and I remember talking to the guy, and this was not Solar States, and I'm looking at everything coming down from the roof, and I said, "Interesting. You don't have a ground coming down from the array. Is this some special code exception?" He said, "Ground. We don't need a ground, equipment ground coming down." And I said, "Oh, okay." And that's when you start, if it's like 10 cents less per watt, that might be what you get. You might be missing a ground wire. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that's crazy. That is nutty, dude.
It's out there, and it's a shame. And, sometimes inspectors, not to knock inspectors, but sometimes they're looking at a lot. And that might be, sometimes stuff just, I don't know. I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Chris, to change gears a little bit.
Yeah,
I remember what it cost on a $1 per watt basis to install at the Crane Arts. What was your $1 per watt for that 300 plus kilowatt system? Do you remember?
It was probably in the 6 to 7 range.
Yep, that's right where we were for the Crane Arts too. It was like $6.10 a watt.
Yeah, and that was splitting pennies too at the time.
Yeah,
everything was
really was.
I think right now, like, just to talk about how much the industry has changed, I think for 300 kW right now, we're installing just around $2 a watt, $2.20.
That's amazing. Yeah. Would you say that would be prevailing? I mean, we don't need to get down that rabbit hole.
Probably.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. Maybe.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's just incredible.
You never know. I mean, we're looking at projects where the bid at prevailing wage is around $2. I mean, not saying we're going to take those, but it's definitely within the realm of possibility.
That's awesome.
And that shows you, I think that speaks to the equipment simplification. It speaks to labor improvements. It speaks to a lot of maturing in the industry, as you said, like the business, it changing to a business meant that component costs came down in price. They just,
and it wasn't like a race to the bottom. It was just, like you said, maturity and efficiency in manufacturing and SolarEdge is notorious for really getting rid of anything unnecessary and really driving down. I think it's really more of an Israeli kind of mentality, but of just stripping out what's unneeded in equipment. And driving that cost down. But
and I also think that, like, I often make this analogy to Costco, because I think the industry as a whole has kind of simplified the product offering, in addition to the number of parts and the complexity of the parts. we're offering SolarEdge and Enphase, and we don't have 7 different types of inverters, and maybe here and there.
I think that's awesome.
That creates a lot of knowledge base for our installers, for our engineers, for our people in ops. They don't have to look at the spec sheets for 7 different types of inverters and figure out how to commission them, how to install them. They've got 2 that they know really well, that they do really fast, that they always get right, and that efficiency drives down cost.
Yeah, and I'm sure the distributors are loving that too.
Exactly.
CED and those guys. I mean, that across the board. That just simplifies the business.
Yeah, no doubt. And I also think like things like the SolarEdge synergy. The 100 kW, 120 kW. It's like we used to need 4 inverters to get to 100 kW or 5 inverters. And the weight, right? Transformer-based inverters were so heavy. You had to mount them to something that was like
that's a big
capable of holding 1 million pounds.
Yeah, so I really think that simplicity, and then how this is going to branch out in the home, and what you're monitoring in the home, and what you're turning on and off during the day, and all that kind of neat ecosystem stuff is going to be really cool. But
I actually have a question about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's SolarEdge's take on bidirectional EV chargers in the home?
We've been developing the same thing. It's I'm trying to think how to describe it, because I'm not in that group anymore. We're obviously all for it, and it's coming.
Oh, you heard it here first on Yooo Son.
I think it is coming. I don't know that. I don't know any dates or anything, but it's
world premiere. And
when you say bidirectional, you're talking about pulling in your your
I
Tesla
just think,
and then using it in a
vehicle. Everybody's talking about batteries, and I think that batteries are so important. Everybody's talking about the electrified lifestyle, monitoring their whole home, their appliances, how to really streamline and make this whole thing really efficient. And I mean, everybody's been talking about it forever. And, Micah uses the phrase vehicle to grid, which is, kind of like this long-standing contentious power conversation in terms of like utilities not wanting people to discharge their cars to the grid. But, using your car as a means of kind of like getting back to your point, in places where there's a grid that might have different types of characteristics of being overburdened, discharging 20% of your car battery, lowering your range from 300 miles to 250, it's a big deal in a house.
Yeah, it's huge. And, it's when it's being pushed through the inverter, which in our case, it would be that scenario. It's no different than that solar, at that point, you're disconnected from the grid. You're using it, depending on how you want to, if you want to push it back on the grid. It's pretty cool. I think the technology is there. I from what I understand, I think that there's some UL listing and, NEC. I don't know the exact arm of legend, whatever is control.
Yeah, the legalese, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's probably the big hurdle with a lot of that is understanding the currents of all the different batteries and, all that good stuff. But yeah, that's cool. That's going to be here, I think, quicker than we think, with not just us.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally agree. I mean, I went to a solar conference a year ago. So I think it was RE Plus, and Bill Brooks, legendary engineer. He basically said, if your battery doesn't have wheels on it, you're doing it wrong. That was a
awesome.
funny story.
I love that. We got to give that to our marketing team.
He just had a big panel discussion where he spoke about, we were involved in this, but it was about the UL 3741. And, how
can you explain,
unsafe.
Right, the
it's
UL 3741?
The way I see UL 3741 is it's a way to interpret the code to basically alleviate the need for rapid shutdown. For any kind of rapid shutdown. It's not.
Which, by the way, I think that was one of the big inflection points for solar.
Yeah, and so it's basically creating a racking system that's completely plastic, and so there's really no, God, this is where it breaks down for me a little bit. But it's a plastic racking system, and he was going into all the details of why it is actually very unsafe, because it brings into play the wire management has to be like the O&M of the wire management has to be just spot on every couple of months, because one stray wire, this whole plan kind of, you know, comes into I don't even know the right word.
Right, the whole thing, it has to encompass the whole array, every aspect of it. So if one thing falls out of compliance, the whole thing falls out of compliance.
Yes, it was really, if you guys found the recording of it, it's pretty cool to listen to all the nuances about the I didn't get to hear the entire thing, but it's pretty, you know.
I mean, I think, as I understand it, there are whole systems where the racking, the wire management, the panels, and, you know, all the associated parts, including the inverter, if they're set up a certain way, they can comply with that UL listing, and thus you don't need to have rapid shutdown devices under. And I think the argument Bill Brooks was making was that's a bunch of BS. We probably shouldn't be allowing.
It was cool. It was interesting though. The discussion that came out of that was pretty cool to listen to. I think you summarized it better, but it's the plastic part of it was interesting, and the wire management I think is the highlight of how are you going to maintain wire over the course of the project.
That's one of the things I love about Micah's leadership, though, because I remember this conference. I remember him talking about that. I remember coming back and some of the engineers and installers being like, dude, this will be so much easier and cheaper. We could lower prices. And it's like, yeah, could we get away with it? Probably. Is it technically to code compliance? Yeah. But is it a whole bunch of BS and should we probably not do it? Yeah, and you know what? We're going to keep doing the straight, responsible thing. We're going to do rapid shutdown, and we're going to make sure that what we're putting on roofs, we stand by and is, you know, really top notch.
I mean, I also think it's really cool to see where you start to have modules that are degrading, or you start to see modules that drop out, or you have sections of arrays that are not performing like you would expect. And I think that stuff's just an incredible advancement in the industry, and even on Resi, I think it's still, you know.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's always great to see you. I wish you all the best in the industry and all the success for you and your family.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Yo, Son. I've been your host, Micah Goldmarkel, here with
Jared.
Thank you guys too. I really appreciate the opportunity here. This is awesome.
Peace, guys. Thanks, Chris, man. We love having you on, man.
Love you guys
we'll have another one. Take care.
All right. Peace.